I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
The review. This is another paid request for Lucas Green. Thank you so much for your generosity, Lucas. I really do appreciate it. If anyone wants to request pretty much any type of review, reaction, movie topic, or whatever, you just send them in either to my PayPal, which is the preferred way, or you join me on my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. If not, no worries. But this is for Season 2 of Spectacular Spider-Man. I have reviewed Season 1, and I was quite surprised by the show. I mean, I don't like the opening theme song. I actually think it's rather lame. But the movie is good for fans of Spider-Man. The action scenes are well done, the stories are intricate, and you see that there's an actual storyline going through these episodes. It does seem like they get the heart of Spider-Man. Spider-Man actually punches quite a few times. It's not one of these bullshit, he doesn't punch. He does fucking punch. You get a variety of villains. Like in this season, you get Mysterio, you get reappearances of Doc Ock and Vulture, and Shocker, Kraven the Hunter, Rhino, Venom, Sandman, Green Goblin, Tombstone, Hammerhead, among others. Silver Sable, Black Cat, they make appearances. Now before I go on, apparently a lot of people enjoyed this show. And I think this is one of the better Spider-Man stuff out there. My favorite will always be the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. I also really enjoyed the MTV one with Neil Patrick Harris voicing Spider-Man. That sadly only lasted 1 year. But this is up there. Like, this was a really entertaining show. With some, again, interesting directing choices. For example, there was one episode where a lot of the battles took place with opera music. Because the characters went to the opera, but then Spider-Man had to fight these bad guys while this opera was going on. So there'd be times, for example, where there's no sound effects, but they're fighting with opera music. And that's not something you normally see in a cartoon, let alone a cartoon like this, but that was interesting. There's another episode where a lot of it was done in flashbacks. So you see what's going on, and then it'll cut to a flashback, what led up to that. Then it goes back to our current time, and then it goes back to a flashback. Well, okay, that was an interesting way of doing that episode. Again, some battles are really solid. Like, there's a battle that Spider-Man has with Venom, which was a great battle in the school, because there's a helicopter and Spidey's on the helicopter, and Venom fucks up the rotor helicopter, and Spidey has to save the chopper, and then that goes into the school, and Spidey's getting his hits in and punching the shit out of Venom. I'm trying to remember, that episode was identity crisis, where Venom starts telling folks that he's Spider-Man, and then the funny thing is, a lot of people don't believe it, because like, Peter Parker is Spider-Man? There's a few that believe it, but a lot of people are like, yeah, no way. Like, Aunt May is told, someone tells her, oh, Peter Parker's Spider-Man. She's like, am I being punked? So I kind of like that bit. But I was saying, apparently this show, which a lot of people liked, the reason it got canceled is Disney being their typical bullshit self. Because this is around the time Disney bought Marvel. Now, technically Sony owns Spider-Man, but I guess maybe they're getting pressure from Disney Marvel. Hey, we want Spider-Man, blah, 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 blah. Which is kind of like buying DC, but you don't have Batman. Or Superman. Like, you have Marvel, but you don't have Spider-Man. Kind of a big deal. So, Disney was probably pissed off about that. Sit Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse on their ass and said, it's like, fuck you and these 3 bowling ball fingers of fury. Stick all 3 up your ass. So I guess maybe Sony, to get them off their backs or something, said, okay, you can either give up the film rights of Spider-Man or the TV rights. So I blame Sony as well for being pussies about it. Or maybe they were forced to. I don't know the details. Maybe they were forced to do it. Maybe Sony had to deal with Marvel. I would assume so, because how else could they do Spider-Man without their approval of Marvel? So maybe because Disney bought Marvel, they had to tell Sony, you gotta do something. You gotta deal with Marvel, now you gotta deal with us. And things are changed, bitches. So, you know, like, hey, either you give us the TV or you give us the film rights. And Sony's like, and believe me, Sony are dumbasses too. They've done a lot of stupid shit. Ghostbusters 2016, Pixels, Men in Black International. The fucking list goes on of their stupid shit. So, but they're like, no, we want to keep the film rights. So here's the TV. Now, Disney could have kept the show going because people seem to like it. I can understand why after watching these 2 seasons. The stories are well done. I thought the voice work is fairly solid. The animation works for what it's going for. You tell people who did the show cared about Spider-Man. And Disney said, nah, we didn't make it. Because if you're like me and you watch a lot of documentaries or you hear a lot of commentaries, there's always a story of this thing was happening, but then new people get on board in the studio, or it gets to a new studio, and they don't like it because someone else before them did it. And it wasn't something they created. So then they piss on it. Or they don't care. Or they only release it in 5 theaters. Or they bury it. It's like, you know what? If you weren't dumb, you could use this to make money, but no, people's egos get in the way. And it's one of those where Disney said, nah, we can do it better. So they canceled this show. They didn't do another show that people didn't like that was more of a comedy show. Where I guess Spidey was acting more like Deadpool. And people didn't like it, and then they got canceled quickly. So the show that people did like, Disney canceled to make room for a more comedy Spider-Man show that people didn't like, and then that got canceled. So once again, Disney are a horrible part of the business. I could say that for most studios, but fuck Disney. I would have been curious a season 3. I would have been curious to see them bring Carnage into the bubble. I think that would have been interesting. But the season as it is 13 episodes. You have blueprints. Last we saw in season 1, Gwen kissed Peter Parker, but he's dragging his fucking feet because he's also got to be Spider-Man. This is the episode where you deal with Mysterio. I thought it was a nice usage of his Spidey sense. But funny enough, I wonder if Disney saw this for when they did Spider-Man Far From Home. Mysterio, and he's using his spider sense to kick it? Interesting. Only this says he's tearing robotic teddy bears' arms off, and this is like Mysterio clone robots that Spider-Man's punching and beating the shit out of in a saloon. This is part of like a movie set. Like, that was fun. You have destructive testing, where that's the episode with Kraven the Hunter. Decent battle. The only thing I didn't like is they turned Kraven the Hunter into a cat creature. I don't know why they did that. That was not needed. Kraven the Hunter works because he's Kraven the Hunter. You don't need to further it by turning into a fucking cat creature. Wasn't needed. So, that's... At least, again, Spider-Man at least webs him and punches his shit out. I'm like, he does punch in the show. Because you think about it, in the movies, he doesn't punch anymore. Because apparently Disney thinks that's against the law. Spider-Man can't punch. Can I punch you? Donkey punch? You have reinforcements. That's where you get the new Sinister Six. And Spider-Man, because last time he did battle Sinister Six is a really cool fight, but the symbiote did it more than Spider-Man. Here, Spider-Man actually gets to do where he takes out Rhino and Sandman, then Kraven and Mysterio, then the last two. Some of the funny bits is that he burns his tongue on hot cocoa, so he's trying to say his lines, but be like, what? And he keeps trying to talk back to the bad guys, but again, because he burned the fucking cocoa, he's like, I thought that was a funny bit. Sheer strength. The reason they're going in depth because I don't want to spoil everything on the shows for people who want to see them. Like sheer strength. That's where you find out that this master planner is Doc Ock, of course, Dr. Octavius. And we're getting to New Year's Eve, to New Year's Day. And throughout the show, like Peter Parker's dragging his feet with Gwen Stacy, but then he falls for Liz. Which is not the love interest that you see Peter Parker much in other media formats other than comics. There's usually like Gwen or really Mary Jane. And now that I think about it, this is one of the only shows that Peter Parker and Mary Jane never got together. Interesting when you think about it. Probably the only cartoon that never happened. At least that I think of. Well, I mean, I don't think they were an item in the old 60s Spider-Man cartoon. But for newer stuff, I can't think of any other ones. That's the episode where there's always the famous shot I remember from the comic book where Spider-Man fought the Juggernaut. No, it wasn't the Juggernaut. It was... I think it was the Juggernaut. Where he's under the heavy equipment and he's pushing himself out. They also did that shot in the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. It would have been nice though if they could actually do the Juggernaut storyline with Spider-Man so that you could use that with that fucking story, but I think it was with that story. I swear it was. Like nothing can stop the Juggernaut. And the point was that no matter what Spider-Man was doing, he can't stop it. But then that was the point, is that he doesn't give up. And he gets up because his Aunt May's thinking of her and other people. So he ultimately does kind of stop the Juggernaut. But so they use that little bit of him getting out in this one. But I don't know, for some reason this episode is one of the ones I remember less of, other than that one bit. And he saves Gwen Stacy from this underwater lab that Doc Ock was keeping her in. First Steps. This is where we find out that apparently Flash Thompson and Peter Parker were best friends in preschool, which is interesting. And that's the episode where he bows the Sandman again. And you get a little bit of a twist that Sandman kind of wants to be... He tries to do the right thing at the end. Thankfully, they don't do that with every villain. See, that's how it works. Every once in a while, sure, you do that with a villain. But don't do that with every villain. And thankfully, this doesn't do that, where every villain is a good guy as well. To the last Spider-Man villains in movies, they do that. Because no one can be truly evil. There always got to be something to them. Even Green Goblin, yeah, the please don't tell Harry. At least in the first Spider-Man movie. If you wonder why I'm looking here, I did write the episode title so I can remember. Growing Pains. This is where someone frames Spider-Man, and that's Venom who frames Spider-Man. J. Jonah Jameson's son, something happens and the guy gets bigger, and then J. Jonah wants his son to be a hero, so then he goes after Spider-Man, but then Spider-Man has to fight him because Venom's a fucking dickhead. Again, I can't remember much about that episode. Identity Crisis, that's the one I mentioned. That's a pretty good one. And then Venom tells folks that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, but then barely anyone believes it. At the second half of the episode, like literally the entire second half of the episode is like one big giant battle. Like pretty good. And throughout the entire season you have that will they, won't they with Peter and Gwen Stacy. It's like, just kiss and fuck already, you know? Another fun episode was Accomplices, because a lot of that was like this back and forth where it was Spidey, Silver Sable, and Hammerhead. And then funny enough, even Spider-Man and Rhino have to team up against Silver Sable and Hammerhead. Where it's like Hammerhead gets this chip that's for these made super soldier mercenaries, then Silver Sable, she gets it, then Hammerhead gets it back, then Spider-Man gets it. It's like, it's all this back and forth. One has the upper hand. I thought it was pretty fast paced with all the fighting and stuff. Like this big game war that happens. Then Rhino enters, and then, like I said, funny enough, Spidey and Rhino has to team up for a little bit. Was that a normal thing I've seen? But that was interesting. Probable Cause, that's where you have these three characters, Shocker, not Horace Pinker, but Shocker, Ox, and Ricochet, the new enforcers. They're stealing this gold. Like, what, you fucking stealing plans from Jeremy Irons and Die with a Vengeance? Stealing Simon Gruber's plan? But they're stealing this gold, and there's a subway train involved. There's a battle on the subway train. Doing pretty decent. Again, the fight scenes in this are really good. The battle scenes. The satisfying for a Spider-Man fan. Gangland, that's the one where it takes place in opera. And like I said, a lot of it takes place with opera music. And this is... And part of this gang war that's happening with Tombstone and Doc Ock and Hammerhead. And I like the fact that some scenes it's with opera music, or there's no sound effects and just opera music. It made it interesting, and it seemed like they were trying to play around with the format of the show, as in being creative. There's nothing wrong with that, being creative. I appreciate when someone's trying to be creative. Doesn't mean it'll always work, but I appreciate it, usually. Subtext, that's the one where I mentioned how it'll go, this is happening, then a flashback, this is happening, this flashback. That deals with Molten Man, and alright episode. Opening night, I would say that's one of the better ones, because kind of like Stallone in Escape Plan, like Spidey is in this prison to test out how strong and how how good the prison is. If it can keep people out, or if he can escape, then something happens and he gets trapped in a prison where all these guys he's got to fight. Now granted, it's not Arkham Asylum, it's not that badass, but it's still fun to see Spidey in a prison with all these guys he's dealing with. And then in the mist there's Black Cat's dad, who happens to be the same guy that killed Uncle Ben. Which, that was an interesting choice. And then the final curtain is a bit him battling Green Goblin. I would say my favorite episodes, I would go with, as I'm looking at this list here, I don't know what my favorite would be, but the ones that come to mind are Identity Crisis, because that second half of the episode battle with Venom was pretty damn good. Accomplices was fun and fast-paced with the whole Daneland war. One gets a chip, then the other gets it, then the other gets it. So yeah, Accomplices would be one. Opening Night, that's the one with the prison. That was an interesting one. Let's see if I do a top 5. Those three would be in it. The one where he fights the Sinister Six, and then at one point he burns his tongue with hot cocoa. I will put that on there. And then the fifth one, I'd go with the Game War, because the whole thing with the opera music, that was an interesting take on it. Like I said, the opening title music I'm not really a fan of. Give me the 90s Spider-Man music any day. It doesn't end on a cliffhanger, at least. So at least there's that. But at the same time, it's like, it would have been nice to see a season 3, because by the end of season 2, he doesn't get the girl because Harry is sad that his dad's dead, and so he's with Gwen. Liz dumps him pretty much, so he's not with her. So would have been nice if there was like the way season 1 ended was nice if there was no more. Here, as that cliffhanger ending is like, kind of a bummer. Because it wasn't meant to be the ending. But then fucking Disney bought it. And yeah, I don't really have much issues with it. I mean, some episodes more than others. Like, I didn't care about Jay Jonas's son being this superhero because Jay Jonah wants him to. I didn't... Molten Man... He's the brother of Liz, the girl that Peter Parker's going out with. But... he was alright, but he wasn't memorable to me as a villain. I wouldn't say there's a lot that I was maybe disappointed that he went with the story went with the Liz, going out with Liz stuff, because it seemed by the ending of season 1, finally he's going to be with Gwen. So I assume with season 2, okay, he's with Gwen Stacy, and then maybe she's going to find out he's Spider-Man, and then, okay, are they going to do the death of Gwen Stacy? Are they not going to do the death of Gwen Stacy? I thought that's what season 2 was going to be planned, and it wasn't. It's like Gwen Stacy kisses Peter Parker, so season 2 was just pussyfooting around, will they, won't they? And ultimately Harry gets Gwen Stacy and he's alone by the end of the season, and it's like, well, fuck. Almost maybe go, what was the point of her kissing him in the end of season 1? I just, because I was supposed to play in the season 3, and... But I guess I assumed in season 2, what maybe they were going to do is season 3, I thought they were going to do with season 2, and then, again, are they going to do the death of Gwen Stacy? Are they not? Are they going to change fate? That'd be weird if they did that, now that I think about it. You think it's going to be the death of Gwen Stacy, but she lives, but then, like, Mary Jane dies? And so now Peter Parker's with Gwen Stacy? And like, oh, Mary Jane died? Wow, well, I guess that's never going to happen. Like, something like that, that'd be interesting. Different direction. But, with that said, I really did like the show. I guess I was contemplating, is there anything else I really disliked? Not too much. Like I said, other than the opening title music and thinking they're going to go with Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker, but then not really. Like I didn't care about Liz. The character of Liz, I didn't give a shit about her at all. Didn't think she was that interesting. I didn't think she was that interesting of a love interest. I just did not give a fuck about that. So, and there's some new villains, but it would have been nice to see something big like Carnage or something that big get brought into it. I mean, people like Hammerhead and Silver Sable, it's alright, but nothing like humongous to me. Like Draven the Hunter, I didn't care for him turning him into a cat creature. So anytime you saw him throughout the rest of the season, it was this cat creature. I thought that was lame. On the flip side, I do think a lot of the stories worked fairly well. It does try to tell a consistent story. You even see the seasons change. Like you have bits in the snow, and then you go into the school year. So as you watch it back to back, it doesn't seem too out of place. It does seem like a consistent show. The voice actors do their jobs well. The action scenes are fun and exciting. Again, they try to do some clever stuff. I mentioned the opera stuff, or there's some fun bits of humor. And I think overall they do get the heart and gist of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker. A guy who's always trying to go into, I gotta do this because I'm Spider-Man, but then my home life gets fucked over and in the shitter. Although part of me's like, buddy, you got really 3 girls that you could fight over. Gwen, Liz, and technically Mary Jane. So you can't be doing that bad. Because not all of us have 3 girls that you could choose from. But yeah, I thought it was the writing was pretty decent on the show. And it was a fun Spider-Man cartoon. It's definitely one of the better ones. Definitely one of the better ones out there. I could see why people were upset when Disney canceled it for a fucking comedy show. Whereas, we're gonna make Spidey kind of like Deadpool, and or whatever the fuck they were trying to do. Was it called Ultimate Spider-Man? I forget what the fuck it was called. How about this? How about you do Spider-Man 2099? Movie, cartoon. When the fuck are we gonna get Spider-Man 2099? When we gonna get that? When we gonna get that? Give me fucking Spider-Man 2099 for fuck's sake. An animated movie. Or a cartoon or something, man. When the fuck are we gonna get Spider-Man 2099? I mean, maybe if I repeat it enough times, we'll get it. With that said, if you like Spider-Man and you want to see a new cartoon, or I say new, it came out quite a few years ago, but if you never saw the cartoon, I would recommend it. I would recommend it. If you go into season 2, you wouldn't be confused, but yeah, go in from season 1. It's 13 episodes each season, so yeah, 26 episodes, which is usually a normal season is 26 episodes. It's like 20-some minutes long a piece. It's worth a look. Yeah, if you like Spider-Man, it's worth a look. It's fun, and they got the character and the heart right. And Spider-Man actually punches. So, fun show. Fun show. So thank you once again, Lucas. Thank you guys for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Later.